Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Great.
Did you get my reading materials?
I did, and I had a chance to look over it. Thank you so much for sending those. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that'll be real helpful, I think.
Absolutely. So why don't I go ahead and do our little introductory piece. Today is June 3rd, 2021, and I am here today with Judge Gary M. Jackson. And I'm Rachel Beyer. I'm the curator of oral history at History Colorado. And today we, after talking in our last session, I was hoping to hear more about your parents. You briefly mentioned them, but they themselves have rich and amazing stories. And so we decided to come back together today to talk about some of those memories of yours and about who your parents were.
Yes. And
where would you like to start?
Well, why don't we start with my mother? So we'll start with her. And her name is Nancelia Elizabeth Scott Jackson. She is 96 years of age. She'll be 97 in October. She lives in an adjoining duplex with me and my family. She currently lives with my sister Kim and her daughter Nicole. And although 96 years of age, she is still flourishing. And when I say that, she has 3 computers that are accessible to her. So she's got her iPhone, she's got a laptop, and she's got a desk computer. And daily she's on the on one of her computers. She is an avid Facebook member and contributor. She, at this point in her life, is the matriarch of our family. She has 2 brothers that are still living, and she maintains contact with them regularly, whether by phone or by email or texting. She's an avid writer, and she has been writing since the age of 13 when she started her own personal diary. But she most recently wrote a letter to the National Historic Foundation on behalf of Winks Lodge, and Winks Lodge being designated as a National Historic Building. So she wrote that letter within the last week. She was born in Chicago and lived in Chicago for 2 years. Her parents, Elizabeth Pitt Scott and Paris Monroe Scott, were both individuals that had been born and raised in Missouri, and basically had migrated to Chicago as a part of the Great Migration. But at the age of 2, my great-grandfather compelled them to come to Colorado. And so I've told you a little bit about my great-grandfather. He came to Colorado in 1919 from Missouri. And so my mother has lived in Colorado since, I believe, about 1925. So from the age of 2, she has lived on the same block, 3rd and Garfield Street, since about 1926, when my great-grandfather had built her mom and dad a home at 354 Garfield Street. And so at 354 Garfield Street, my mom and her 6 brothers and sisters lived until they became adults. My mom went to Stack Elementary School, Gove Junior High School, and East High School. And as well as her 6 brothers and sisters, they would have all gone to the same schools. One of the things that I think is important is that there have been a number of authors and writers who have written about my mother's lifehood, and it goes from neighborhood papers all the way to she has been featured in a couple of PBS specials. The most recent one was a PBS special called Driving While Black. And so that was a PBS special that featured the experiences of Black people, especially during the Jim Crow era and during the rampant segregation in this country, and the impact upon Black people attempting to travel across the United States. And so my mom, in this most recent PBS special that was featured or that was published, I believe in about the spring of this year, my mom talks about her travel from Colorado back to Missouri, and that she, with her brothers and sisters and parents, would travel back and forth between Colorado and Missouri on an annual basis, probably up until my grandparents passed away, which would have been in the mid 60s. Her growing up in North Cherry Creek and her having the second home or the cabin up in Lincoln Hills has been written up in numerous books, newspapers, from USA Today to the newspaper in Gilpin County to, as I indicated, the Cherry Creek newsletter, in which they've talked about my mother's experiences. My mother has always been a person of great faith, and she has belonged to the same church for 75 years. And several years ago, that church, Scott Methodist Church, did a tribute to my mother. and I provided you with a copy of the presentation that I made on my mother's behalf at the church. But that particular event at the church kind of illustrated who my mom is. Despite being the victim of discrimination when she was young and in high school, those types of obstacles never got her down and never dampened her spirit. You know, she talks about, because she lived in North Cherry Creek, that the majority of her friends were white. Probably 90% of her friends that she grew up with were white. And there were incidents such as when her friend would go to a hairdresser in North Cherry Creek, my mom would accompany the friend. The friend would get her hair done, but my mom, because she was Black, they wouldn't do her hair. Esquire Theater, which is right on 6th and Downing Street, that has been around for decades. When she and her teenage friends would go to see a movie, my mother would have to sit in the balcony and the white kids would sit downstairs. There was a time when she was in high school that she was hired to be a sales clerk at the Denver Dry Goods. And my mother, who was always proud of being Black, told her supervisor that she was Black. And as you've seen from my mother's photograph, she's very fair skinned. When the supervisor found out that she was Black, she got demoted from being a sales clerk to working as a stock clerk at the Denver Dry Goods. So despite those types of incidents taking place in her life, she never let those types of incidents keep her from what was going to make her happy and keep her from doing what she wanted to do. She went away to college after graduating from high school, ended up going to the same college that her mother went to, Lincoln University, which is in Jefferson City, Missouri, an historic Black college. And what my mom says is the only regret that she has in life is that she got homesick after the first semester and came home. And she regrets that to this day, that she did not stay at Lincoln University and get a degree. But that's the only regret that I can think that she's ever at least voiced out loud. She returned to Denver, and this was during the World War II days. She did like all the other women that were left at home. She worked in whatever effort she could to support the United States in World War II. And it was during probably 1944, 1945 that she would have met my dad, who was a World War II veteran, had been stationed in Laramie, Wyoming, and had met my dad at a USO event. So they got married by a justice of the peace. And so that sort of started the second part of my mom's life, and that being the part being married. Rachel, is there anything that I have forgotten that you have a question about during those high school years or elementary or those years for my mom?
Sure. So the one question that did come to mind as you were telling that this your mom's early years is that you said she's been a member of Scots for more than 75 years now. So she would have been in her 20s when she started going there. Was that because the church itself was new when she got to that age, or was it she was raised in a different church and then moved over to that church? Or
Yeah, she was raised in a different church. Her parents had gone to a Baptist church. So she was raised in a Baptist church over in the Five Points area. And it was called, let me think. I think it was called New Hope Baptist Church. I know that the pastor was Reverend Liggins, Liggins, and we'll have to check whether or not it was actually New Hope Baptist Church. But during that period of time, there were 4 or 5 prominent Black churches that Black people went to. And so, they would have always traveled from their home on Garfield Street over to the Five Points area to go to church. So it was not until she became an adult and maybe even married that she transferred to Scots Methodist Church. And so I think you're right. She would have started Scots when she was 21, 22 years of age. And one of the interesting things about that membership in that church is that she still has 3 living friends that are now 95, 96, that were all church members with her at Scots Methodist Church. And these are 3 friends that would have attended high school with her, or she would have known them either from East High School or Manual High School. And so she does have 3 friends that, at least on a monthly basis, they talk by phone.
it's amazing. No, I appreciate you sharing all of this. I think we've kind of covered the basics of your mom as far as kind of her trajectory in her early years. What about your father?
Now, with my dad, he grew up in a small town in Missouri, Mexico, Missouri. He went to segregated schools in Missouri through high school. His mother was a domestic. In other words, she worked for white families. He, at the age of 18, enlisted in the Army and joined a Army unit that had a tour of duty in North Africa and Europe. It was a supply troop that provided supplies to the men that were fighting. He rose to the rank of Master Sergeant, and during his period of time in the Army, he got 3 Bronze Stars. I can say that he never talked about why he got those Bronze Stars, but he did talk about the fact that he felt that the Black service people were treated sometimes worse than the German prisoners of war, and that there were several very, very negative racial incidents that occurred while he was in the service. Those as I indicated, the reason why he got the Bronze Stars, I can't tell you, because he never talked about it.
Right.
And he rarely talked about some of the negative military experiences, other than I can remember him talking about the Black servicemen being treated worse than the German prisoners of war. Um, he suffered a back injury while in the Army, and he was transferred from Europe to Laramie,
Mhm.
where he was honorably discharged. And it was through one of his visits from Wyoming to Colorado that he met my mom. Um, uh, Early after they were married, my dad, uh, like many members of my family, my dad was a sort of a born leader. He put together a drill team, and it was five of his Black Army buddies that formed a drill team, and they would have exhibitions at different parades in Denver and even in Wyoming, and he enjoyed that drill team that he led. He used his Army benefits to go to an art school, and he uh, was a very, very skilled technical illustrator and an artist. As an artist, he did lots of oil paintings, pastels, um, pencil drawings, and once he got his certificate as a technical illustrator, he was hired as a draftsman at Martin Marietta.
Mm.
And this would have been in the late 50s. And during that period of time, he was one of the very few professional Black people that worked at Martin Marietta. He got laid off at Martin Marietta, and within a day or two, he got hired at Laurie Air Force Base um, at a very low level clerk position. I think it was a GS3, and steadily rose through the GS ranking to where he became a technical illustrator at Laurie Air Force Base and became a supervisor and ended up retiring from working at Laurie at the age of 65. My dad was a good athlete. Um, he learned how to ski in the late 50s and enjoyed going up to Winter Park. And he and several of his friends created Colorado's first Black ski club. It was called the Slippers and Sliders. And they, on a weekly basis, would go to various ski resorts from Winter Park to Aspen to Vail to Steamboat Springs. And so he skied until he was 77 years of age.
Oh.
And when he retired from working at Laurie, he was one of the founders of a Black running club. And let me see if I can get you the name of that running club that he formed. Because what was really significant to me was at the age of 65, he would run half marathons and marathons. And he enjoyed running. And I would see people that I knew that would say to me that they would see my dad running up and down Monaco Parkway.
Mm.
The name of that running club was called the Martin Luther King Junior Flyers. And that was a running club that he helped co-found in the mid 80s. And, one of the other things that he and I used to do, we skied together until he was 77, but we also, on several occasions, ran the Boulder. And so he used to love running the Boulder. And he would run with about 7 or 8 of us. And these were all my friends that were 20 and 30 years younger than him. But he would run the Boulder and beat us by 10 minutes. So he was that good a runner and had that type of endurance. And so Dad used to really enjoy also going up to Lincoln Hills. And because he had the painting skills that he had, he painted the placard on our cabin, the Zephyr View cabin. So that's a placard that remains today, but it was his artwork that was displayed on the cabin. Anything else I've missed?
So after your parents married, did your mom continue to work, or did she become full-time mom?
No, she worked. So she had 2 jobs. She worked part-time at a day school that was on 3rd and Garfield Street. And so she would have worked at a day school. When I say day school, it was a preschool. So it was a preschool that was run by 2 ladies. And the 3 of them became fast friends. My mom would have worked for them for about 15 years, to the time that my mom and dad divorced. When my mom and dad divorced after 30 plus years of marriage, then my mom started working full time, and she worked as a clerk at the Air Force accounting company. Mm-hmm. When she retired at the age of 65, because I was the owner of my own law firm, she became my number one substitute if one of our receptionists was on vacation or got ill. I could call my mom and she would drive over to my law office building and she would be our receptionist. So she was sort of on call, and she probably did that from the age of about 65, when she had retired from the Air Force Finance Center, until she was probably 85, for 20 years. And my dad did the same thing. After his retirement, he used to love to be the janitor, to clean up the office building that my partner and I own. So he got great joy out of being the handyman around our office building. My mom, one of the things that she liked about working as a receptionist at my law firm was seeing the important people that were coming in and out of the law firm. And so there were important people to her, such as different members of our church, from the pastor to the deputy pastors to other people that were receiving legal service from my law firm. So she enjoyed that. When I talk about my mom being a writer, one of the real significant things that I can remember was when I first became a lawyer in 1970. And this was with the Denver District Attorney's Office, because that was considered to be a plum position, being a deputy DA in Denver. There was a photograph of me in the Denver Post, and in that photograph, I had my big afro hairdo. I received several anonymous letters criticizing the way I looked. And there was also an editorial opinion that was written by a Supreme Court justice in the Denver Post criticizing the district attorney's office for hiring me because of my afro hairdo and my appearance. When my mother saw that editorial opinion, she wrote a letter to the Supreme Court justice, basically admonishing him and saying to him, you should judge my son based upon his grades, his performance, his trial work, and not his appearance. The Supreme Court justice, to his credit, contacted my mother, apologized to her, invited her, my mother and I, to meet him at the Supreme Court building, where he again apologized and to the two of us for writing the letter that he wrote. Now, as I look back at it today, you know, that took a lot of courage for my mother to do that. I appreciate the apology that the Supreme Court justice gave to me personally, but a better apology would have been a retraction letter in the Denver Post. That would have been a better apology and a more appropriate apology as I look back at it, you know, 50 years ago. But my mother, if she felt that something was unfair, discriminatory, she would write a letter, whether it be to the governor, to the mayor, to the city council, and she never bit her tongue. She always expressed herself as to what she thought was right. And she's doing that today on Facebook. So she is a political activist at 96 years of age.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Both of your parents have your mom has and your dad had very creative, you know, your mom's writing, your dad's art. And how did that creativity filter into you and your brother and sister?
Well, I have to laugh at that because if you saw my handwriting, you would say, well, where did he, I can't read it. I can't read it. And I think that where that creativity may show is just in my brother and I and my sisters' love of reading. I mean, we're all avid readers. Hopefully the creativity shows in what we're trying to do in terms of renovating the cabin. But in terms of, and then I do a lot of writing. Since I retired, my first project was to write a 10-page article for the American Judges Association. I write on a regular basis articles regarding my life experiences. These are articles that are mainly legal type of writings that I hope will be encouragement to others. I started writing my life story during COVID, so I'm up to about 1978, and that life story really is dealing with when I decided to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. So I've got a lot of years to catch up on my writing, but I'm up to about 1978. And so that's, I guess that's where my mom and dad's creativity may have affected me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. In one of the articles you sent me, you talk about your, I believe it was your mom working with Mayor and Honorable Mrs. Webb with the project. Would you share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, that would have been my dad. My dad
Oh,
would
your dad,
have
sorry.
been working with Wellington and Wilma Webb. They had a project where they were raising money for historically Black colleges. And I think that it may have come under either the, let me look it up for a moment. Let me pause for a moment.
Sure.
Oh, it was called the annual United Negro College fundraiser. And so that was a project that Mayor Wellington Webb and his wife Wilma were involved in for years. And so my dad would have done the artwork for their annual dinner, raising money for the United Negro College fundraiser. And then my dad was also active in supporting Mayor Webb in the 3 different terms that he ran for mayor. And then my mother was always very, very active in voting. She was in every election. She was a poll watcher or a registrar at the neighborhood election. And she probably did that from the age of 30 to 85 years of age, that she was an annual poll watcher and registrar in the neighborhood.
That's wonderful. So thank you for sharing this about your parents. That was the one piece that I felt was we kind of didn't talk about a lot on Tuesday that I really wanted to hear, because it really seems to me that that you are one of multiple generations of a family that has really been focused on education and just self-determination and living your lives the way that you've wanted to live your lives, and just kind of pushing through those barriers as you come to them. I always like to, talk about where that comes from for each of us. So for you, what is the big, this is way too big of a question. I apologize, because I know it's going to come out as way too big of a question. But for you, what are those pieces, those really big pieces that you've learned from your parents that you yourself carry forward, that you try to instill in your children and in your grandchildren, that comes down, the generational advice, I guess?
I look at, first of all, value systems are really important. And, the value system that I think that I've gained from family members going back to my great grandfather was hardworking. I don't remember a day of my dad taking sick leave. Um, when I hear about the stories of my great grandfather as a carpenter, um, the stories I hear was that he'd leave the house at sunrise and wouldn't come back home until it was dark. So he was working 12-hour days. So that is one of the traits. I think another trait that is just responsibility. That you have the responsibility not only for yourself and your family, but you have the responsibility for your race. And because for so many years and for so long, and even to this day, there are negative descriptions given about Black people and Black people's lack of character. So I have the responsibility to carry on in a fashion that, if you want to use the term, being a credit to your race. My great grandfather, my grandparents, my parents were all trailblazers. They were all vanguards. They were all firsts in a number of ways. And so I look at my life as also being a trailblazer in a professional arena that they didn't have the opportunity to have. Like my grandmother, who had a college degree. Despite having that college degree, she was not allowed to teach in Colorado. And so she ended up being a salad woman at the VA hospital. And so I look at my being fortunate enough to be a trailblazer as a lawyer and as a judge. So that's important. Other traits that I think are important, and it was started with my great grandfather, and that's the love of the mountains, and having that type of positive experience by being able to enjoy the Colorado mountains. So, those are traits or characteristics that I have that go back for generations with my family heritage.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to share with us? You've shared so much already, I know, but is there anything you'd like to close out with as we wrap things up?
Well, let's talk about my marriage and partnership with my wife.
Yes, let's.
About that.
That sounds great.
Both of us are on our second marriage. Both of us, as she puts it, she was her parents were in the military. So she puts it that the girl with wings marries the boy with roots. Okay.
That's so much.
Because she traveled all across the country until she was 16 years of age, where they ended up in Colorado Springs.
Mm,
And so Regina and I married at the time I was 40. She was 34. She was an executive with US West. I had my own law firm. And so we now have had a partnership for 34 years. We have raised 2 children, and they're stepchildren for me. But both of them are college educated, and our son has a law degree from CU. Our daughter has a master's degree. They are both doing well in their professions. Currently, my wife has a real estate company. When she retired from US West about 20 years ago, she opened up her own real estate company. And she's had several side businesses. And they range from providing computer services for seniors.
Oh.
She did that for a while. On the art side, she worked for a flower nursery, learning how to put together flower bouquets and artificial bouquets. And for about the last 15 years, or no, I shouldn't say that, for about the last 2 years, she has a business called Race to Dinner. And it is a business where she and her business partner, who's an East Indian woman, have dinner parties with white women, usually 7 or 8, and they talk about racial issues and how to be an anti-racist. And she is doing this nationally and now even internationally. She is going to be on the 60-minute program in France. She's currently on the cover of New York Magazine. She has been on the cover of the Guardian magazine. And she and her partner are writing a book about how white women can be the ones that can lead the way in terms of being anti-racist. So while I'm doing my racial justice type issues with the court system, she's doing it even more broadly. She's doing it with white women. And so that's sort of a snapshot of what the two of us are doing together.
And what is her name? So we have that here in the oral history.
Excuse me?
What is her name? So we have that here in the oral history.
Regina Lee Jackson.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like you're a powerhouse couple.
Well, we have been described at that by a couple of urban papers. So we've been characterized as that.
It seems like you're still carrying on her idea of roots and wings. That your racial justice work is here in Colorado and building in all those
Right.
roots here in the state, and that hers are wings that come out of Colorado and are spreading.
Yeah, all the way to France.
Yeah, all the way. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so I think that's a great way to wrap it up, unless you have other things that you want to talk about. I know you have an appointment that you need to get to today as well.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else. Whatever I've sent you, you can incorporate it any way that you want to.
Okay.
And that's fine.
Okay.
But I think that you've got more than a snapshot.
It's wonderful. I thank you so much for sharing your story and your family's story with us. I think it's going to be really exciting for people to be able to listen to and to learn from. The only other thing I'll ask you for is a photograph, so that we can have a photograph of you in our when we put this into the catalog.
Yeah, I can email you professional photograph and a casual one. If you want a couple, I can do that.
That sounds great.
Yeah, because I'd like to maybe give you one of me up in Lincoln Hills and
That's great.
then one on the bench.
Absolutely. Anything you share with us, we'll put on the catalog record. The way that so you know the next steps from this now is that this will go to one of my volunteers to create an index, which is a kind of a table of contents of your story. And then I'm going to edit out the little bits from the beginning that, were before we started recording yesterday or Tuesday. And then I'll send it back to you just to give the thumbs up. So once I send it back to you, if there's anything that you decide you want redacted or we accidentally spell something wrong in the index, we'll give you the opportunity to do that whenever you're ready for us to proceed. Then I'll go ahead and get it a session. Everything will go into our catalog and it will be available on SoundCloud, and I'll send you all that information so that you have it once we've legally brought it in to the collection.
Okay. And like for my mother, how would she be able to access it?
So we are you'll be able to listen to the entire thing. We'll have the audio posted to SoundCloud, which is publicly available, and I'll send you the link for that. We will also have our catalog record, which is publicly available, and I'll send you the link for that. And then we are currently in the process of getting a YouTube channel up and running specifically for our oral histories. So it might be a month or two before this video version is available, but the audio will be available sooner. So we'll end up having a catalog record, an audio record, and a video record, but the video record's just going to be delayed a little bit longer.
Okay. And when you say the video record, will that be a video of me talking to you?
Yeah, it'll be this exactly what we've done right here.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Rachel, I enjoyed. Thank you much.
Thank you so much.
And I'll look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully at one of the music events.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you haven't gotten one yet and you ever want a behind the scenes tour of the museum, just let me know. We can arrange for that too.
Okay. Thank you much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.